The freezing wind of Chicago whipped through the towering skyscrapers of the business district, but Lily did not abandon her post. She stood beside her small, meticulously organized cart, selling fresh organic wraps and natural juices to the corporate workers rushing past her like a river of gray suits. She had been standing there since 6 o'clock in the morning, her hands numb despite the thick gloves she wore, driven by the desperate hope of selling every single item to survive another week. It was then that she offered a turkey and avocado wrap to a distinguished man sitting in a sleek motorized wheelchair. He paused, his sharp eyes locking onto hers, and he hesitated in a way that made Lily's heart flutter with sudden anxiety. She extended the carefully wrapped food with trembling fingers, putting on her warmest smile, completely unaware that this fleeting transaction on an icy sidewalk would alter the trajectory of her entire existence. He stared at her for several long seconds, as if peering straight through her exhausted facade to witness something nobody else bothered to see in a lowly street vendor. "Everything is made from scratch, sir, completely natural," she whispered softly, her breath forming small white clouds in the frigid morning air. He looked down at the wrap, holding it with a gentle reverence, treating the simple meal not just as street food she had prepared at 4 o'clock that morning, but as a precious artifact. Reaching into the inner pocket of his impeccably tailored Italian suit coat, he produced a well-worn leather wallet that contrasted sharply with the heavy gold watch gleaming on his wrist. His movements were fluid, marked by years of quiet habit, and he pulled out a crisp $50 bill, extending it toward her with a steady hand. Lily's eyes widened, and a wave of panic washed over her chest as she stared at the high denomination. "Sir, the wrap is only $8, and I am so sorry, but I absolutely do not have the change for this," she said rapidly, attempting to gently push the money back toward him. The man simply shook his head, and a warm, transformative smile broke across his previously stern features, softening the sharp lines of his face. "You do not need to give me any change today. Please, consider the rest an investment in the next few meals you are going to sell me," he replied. There was an underlying timbre in his deep voice, a tranquil certainty that made Lily instantly realize this was not an act of pitying charity, but something entirely different that she could not quite comprehend. "Are you entirely sure, sir, this is a lot of money for a simple meal?" Lily insisted, her conscience refusing to just take the cash without a fight. But the man was already tucking his wallet away, adjusting his scarf against the biting Chicago wind. "I am absolutely sure about this. By the way, what is your name?" he asked, his gaze direct and genuinely interested, causing a sudden flush of heat to rush to Lily's freezing cheeks. "Lily, my name is Lily Sanders," she answered timidly. He extended his hand, and when she took it, she felt a firm, reassuring warmth that radiated strength. "Henry Anderson. It is a profound pleasure to meet you, Lily." The name sounded vaguely familiar to her, perhaps something she had seen on the local news, but she could not pinpoint exactly where. Henry unpeeled the foil wrapping right there on the bustling pavement, taking a generous bite of the turkey and avocado wrap. He closed his eyes for a brief moment as he chewed, savoring the fresh flavors, while Lily held her breath anxiously, awaiting the verdict from a man who looked like he dined at five-star restaurants. "This is genuinely exceptional," he finally declared, opening his eyes and offering her another brilliant smile. "How long have you been making these?" Lily felt the tight, nervous tension drain from her tired shoulders. "About 6 months now. I had to start doing this after my mother became terribly ill and could no longer work as a house cleaner," she admitted. The honest confession spilled from her lips naturally, completely bypassing the defensive filter she normally maintained around wealthy strangers. There was an aura about Henry that naturally inspired absolute trust and comfort. "And you do all of this entirely by yourself?" The grocery, shopping, the preparation, the standing out here, selling. He asked, his brow furrowing with genuine curiosity. Lily confirmed with a tired but proud nod. I wake up at 4 o'clock every single morning, prepare everything in my tiny kitchen, and take the bus 3 miles to get down here. This corner is one of my best, most reliable spots. Henry finished the last bite of the wrap, pulling a monogrammed linen handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his hands gracefully. May I ask you a rather personal question, Lily? She hesitated for a fraction of a second, intimidated by his intense focus, but gave a small nod of consent. Have you ever seriously considered expanding your little enterprise, perhaps moving into a fixed location with a proper commercial structure? The question caught her completely off guard, making her laugh with a bitter edge of reality. Of course I have dreamed about it, but I do not have a single dime to invest in a business. I barely make enough to pay our monthly rent and cover the expensive medications my mother needs to survive. Henry fell completely silent for a few moments, turning his wheelchair slightly to observe the chaotic street, watching the hundreds of corporate employees rushing in and out of the massive glass and steel skyscraper looming directly behind him. Lily, I would like to make you a business proposal, but before I do, I need to confess something to you, he said, his tone dropping into a serious register that made her stomach flutter. I actually work in this very building. In fact, to be perfectly precise, I am the owner of the company headquartered here, Henry stated calmly. The busy city around Lily seemed to screech to an absolute halt as she processed his words. She looked up at the 70-story architectural marvel towering over them, then back down at the humble man in the wheelchair. The owner, she managed to whisper, her voice barely audible over the roaring traffic. The majority shareholder, he corrected gently. And every single morning I look out my window and see you standing down here. You are always impeccably polite, always smiling even when people ignore you or treat you poorly. That rare resilience caught my undivided attention, Lily. Little did she know this freezing morning was the final chapter of her old struggles and the breathtaking prologue to a completely new destiny. Lily felt her legs turn to absolute jelly beneath her as the reality of Henry's words settled into her mind. For 6 grueling months, she had been peddling her humble sandwiches right on the doorstep of this billionaire's empire without having the faintest clue. I had no idea, Mr. Anderson. If my cart is blocking the entrance or causing a nuisance, I can pack up and find another block right away, she stammered, already reaching for the handles of her cart. On the contrary, Henry interjected swiftly, raising a hand to stop her. You do not bother anyone at all. In fact, that is exactly why I want to offer you this proposal. We have a massive internal cafeteria on the 3rd floor that serves 200 of my employees daily. The current catering is greasy, overpriced, and terrible. What if you set up a healthy food station right inside Iheridir Thiek, Silerten Fi? Lily stared at him with wide, disbelieving eyes, convinced the bitter cold was making her hallucinate. The offer sounded entirely too miraculous to belong to her harsh reality. I do not understand why a man in your position would go out of his way to do this for a street vendor like me, she replied cautiously. Henry shifted slightly in his wheelchair, his expression turning deeply reflective as he chose his next words with utmost care. I do this because I know exactly what it means to desperately need an opportunity, and because I firmly believe you possess an extraordinary blend of talent and sheer determination. Finding those 2 traits residing in the same person is incredibly rare in my corporate world. Lily's heart was pounding so furiously against her ribs that she feared he could hear the frantic rhythm. But I have absolutely zero capital to invest in a cafeteria, Henry. I do not have a college degree, let alone any formal experience in running a corporate business. She protested, dropping the formal titles in her state of shock. As for the financial investment, I will personally provide the $50,000 required for the commercial kitchen equipment, The remodeling and the permits, Henry countered smoothly. You will provide your tireless work ethic, your brilliant recipes, and your management. We would be official business partners. The word partner echoed endlessly in Lily's spinning mind. The mere idea of being the business partner of a Chicago corporate titan felt like a wildly impossible fantasy spun from a movie script. I need some time to process this. I have to speak with my mother, she murmured, her voice shaking. Henry smiled warmly, a look of deep respect shining in his eyes. Of course you do. I would never ask you to make an impulsive, life-altering decision on a freezing sidewalk. But I would love to show you the space tomorrow afternoon if you are willing. That way you can see exactly what I am proposing. Lily nodded dumbly, still delightfully dazed. Henry pulled a thick, elegant business card from his pocket and handed it to her. My direct cellular number is on the back. Call me when you make up your mind, but please do not take too long. My employees are desperate for decent food, and I am in dire need of someone genuinely trustworthy to provide it. He turned his chair toward the sliding glass doors, but paused to look over his shoulder one last time. Thank you for the wonderful meal and the honest conversation, Lily. It has been years since someone spoke to me without wanting to exploit my bank account. That afternoon, Lily could barely focus on her remaining customers. Her mind was entirely consumed by the word partner. When she finally returned to her cramped, drafty apartment on the south side of the city, she found her mother, Valerie, sitting in a worn armchair watching the evening news. Valerie was 58 years old, but looked a decade older due to her failing heart, though her sharp eyes missed absolutely nothing. Lily sat on the edge of the frayed sofa and recounted every single detail of the unbelievable morning: the $50 bill, the billionaire in the wheelchair, the astonishing offer of a corporate cafeteria. Valerie listened in absolute silence, her weathered hands folded in her lap, processing the magnitude of her daughter's tale. When Lily finished speaking, a heavy, contemplative silence blanketed the tiny living room for several minutes. Mom, what do you honestly think about all of this? Lily finally asked, unable to bear the quiet suspense. Valerie let out a long, shuddering sigh before reaching out to grasp her daughter's cold hands. My sweet girl, I raised you to be deeply cautious and street-smart because rich men rarely offer grand favors out of the pure goodness of their hearts. But I also raised you to recognize a golden opportunity when it comes knocking loudly on your front door. If this wealthy man simply wanted to take advantage of you, he could have just offered you a minimum wage job in his kitchen. He would not have bothered inventing a complex story about a legitimate business partnership. The grounded, practical logic of her mother's words washed over Lily, settling her racing thoughts and giving her a profound sense of clarity. So you truly believe I should accept his offer and risk everything? Lily asked, searching her mother's eyes for absolute confirmation. I believe you need to put on your best clothes tomorrow. Walk into that skyscraper with your head held high and thoroughly inspect that space. Speak to him, examine the legal details, and if the man's intentions remain honorable, it would be the biggest mistake of your life to walk away from this, Valerie advised firmly. That night, Lily barely slept a single wink. She tossed and turned in the narrow bed she shared with her teenage sister Sophia, dreaming of gleaming stainless steel counters, an army of employees, and the terrifying prospect of failure. What if her recipes were not good enough for high-class executives? What if it was all a cruel, elaborate corporate prank? The following day, right at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Lily stood nervously in the grand marble lobby of the skyscraper. The intimidating security guard Marcus, who usually glared at her through the glass, stepped forward with a shockingly polite bow. Miss Lily, Mr. Anderson is expecting you on the 12th floor. Please use the private executive elevator, Marcus directed warmly. Ascending in the silent mirror-paneled elevator, Lily smoothed down her modest skirt, trying to calm her racing pulse. When the polished doors slid open, Henry was already waiting in the lavish corridor, a bright, welcoming smile on his face. "You are perfectly on time. I greatly admire punctuality," he greeted her. As he led her toward a sprawling, sunlit office overlooking the Chicago skyline, Lily knew there was no turning back from this extraordinary adventure. Henry guided Lily toward the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of his executive suite, gesturing down at the dizzying view of the city below. "Do you see that exact square of concrete next to the subway entrance?" he asked softly. Lily squinted downward, instantly recognizing the exact spot where she had parked her humble food cart for the past 6 months. "I have watched you from up here through blizzards, torrential rains, and bitter winds. You never missed a single day, and you never lost your grace. That unwavering dedication tells me far more about your character than any fancy Ivy League degree ever could." Lily felt a furious blush creeping up her neck. "I was just doing what I had to do to keep my family afloat, Henry. It is nothing spectacular," she deflected humbly. "Do not ever diminish your own brilliance, Lily. Now, let us go see your new kingdom." Henry insisted, gently leading the way to the executive elevator. They descended to the 3rd floor, emerging into a massive echoing space, filled with sleek modern tables and the unfortunate scent of stale, greasy fried food. Henry pointed toward a large, underutilized corner flooded with natural light. "This is where we will build your domain. We will tear out those old counters and install professional refrigeration, gleaming prep stations, and whatever else your heart desires." Lily slowly paced the area, her imagination instantly coming alive, picturing a vibrant display of fresh fruits, organic salads, and artisan sandwiches. The raw potential of the space was intoxicating, but her cautious nature demanded hard facts before she allowed herself to celebrate. They returned to Henry's immaculate office, where he produced a thick folder containing beautifully organized spreadsheets and architectural blueprints. "I believe in absolute transparency, Lily. I will inject $50,000 to cover the entire build-out and top-tier equipment. You will pay a purely symbolic rent of $300 a month. The monthly profits will be split 60% for you and 40% for me." Lily nearly choked on the high-quality sparkling water he had just offered her. "Wait, 60% for me? But you are providing all the capital," she exclaimed in disbelief. Henry leaned back in his leather chair, a shadow of deep vulnerability momentarily crossing his striking features. "You are the one who will be bleeding sweat into this daily. I am just providing the initial spark. Besides, after my accident, my perspective on wealth drastically changed." Sensing a safe space between them, Lily gently asked about his past, and Henry bravely opened up. 12 years ago, a drunk driver had utterly destroyed his car, shattering his spine, and permanently binding him to a wheelchair. He spoke quietly of the agonizing rehabilitation, the friends who vanished when he could no longer attend their wild parties, and the fiancée who coldly returned his ring just 3 months after the tragic crash. The painful betrayal had turned his heart to ice, making him a ruthless, isolated businessman who trusted nobody. "Helping someone as genuinely deserving as you makes me feel human again, Lily. It reminds me of why I built this empire in the first place, before everything became an endless, soulless pursuit of profit margins." Deeply moved by his profound honesty, Lily squared her shoulders and laid out her terms with newfound confidence. She demanded a crystal-clear, ironclad contract, a guarantee that she would incur no crushing personal debt if the venture failed, and the absolute freedom to dissolve the partnership if it became too overwhelming. Henry's eyes lit up with profound respect as he eagerly agreed to every single condition. 6 weeks later, The grand opening day finally arrived. Lily was in the newly constructed commercial kitchen by 5 o'clock in the morning, frantically organizing the displays of vibrant salads and perfectly wrapped sandwiches. When the clock struck 7 and the first wave of corporate employees flooded the cafeteria, she stepped behind the counter, her hands shaking, and offered her very first smile as an official business owner. The success of the healthy food station was instantaneous and overwhelmingly explosive. By noon, she had completely sold out of her entire inventory, receiving rave reviews from executives who were thrilled to finally eat food that didn't put them to sleep at their desks. Overwhelmed by the crushing demand, Lily immediately hired her trusted childhood friend Sarah to manage the cash register while she focused entirely on the culinary operations. Henry became a permanent fixture in her days, taking his lunch at a quiet corner table every afternoon, watching her command her bustling domain with an incredibly proud smile. Their daily lunches together quickly transformed into hours of deep philosophical conversations, sharing their childhood memories, their darkest fears, and their brightest dreams for the future. However, success in the corporate world rarely comes without a bitter serving of venomous jealousy. 3 months into their thriving partnership, Lily was wiping down a table when she overheard 2 senior finance managers whispering maliciously over their coffees. She really hit the jackpot, didn't she? Snagging the crippled billionaire boss with a few pathetic sandwiches. It is incredibly easy to manipulate a lonely guy in a wheelchair if you pretend to care about him. The cruel, venomous words felt like a physical knife plunging directly into Lily's chest. She retreated to the kitchen, fighting back hot tears of humiliation and rage. When Henry came down for his usual lunch, he instantly noticed the lingering sadness in her beautiful eyes and gently demanded to know exactly what had extinguished her usual radiant light. With tremendous reluctance, Lily confessed the awful rumors echoing through the building. Henry's jaw clenched with barely suppressed fury, but his voice remained incredibly tender when he spoke to her. Lily, there will always be miserable people who cannot fathom that good things happen through honest merit. They prefer ugly conspiracies over acknowledging your brilliant competence. He reached across the table, his strong fingers gently enveloping her trembling hand. You did not take advantage of me. On the contrary, you brought vibrant color back into a life that had been painted in agonizing shades of gray for over a decade. The raw, breathtaking honesty of his confession hung heavily in the air, shifting their relationship from a professional partnership into something profoundly deeper, terrifying, and beautifully inevitable. The magnetic tension between them grew impossible to ignore over the next few weeks. Their casual business meetings frequently bled into long, intimate dinners, where they completely forgot about profit margins and corporate strategies. One stormy evening, Henry offered to drive Lily home to her modest apartment on the south side of the city. His expensive, heavily modified vehicle glided smoothly through the rain-slicked streets of Chicago. When he finally parked beneath the flickering street lamp outside her building, a heavy, charged silence filled the luxurious cabin of the car. Gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, Lily turned to him in the dim light. Henry, I need the absolute truth tonight. Why did you really go to such incredible lengths to change my life? She whispered, her heart pounding relentlessly. Henry turned off the engine, plunging them into the quiet rhythm of the falling rain. He looked deeply into her eyes, stripping away every protective corporate barrier he had built over the years. Because that first morning, when I looked at you, shivering in the freezing wind, but still offering me a smile, I saw a fiery hope that I had completely lost. And more importantly, you were the very first person in 12 long years to look at me and see a man, instead of just seeing a tragic victim bound to a wheelchair. His voice broke slightly on the final word, revealing the profound depth of his emotional scars. Lily reached across the console, her soft hands gently cupping his strong, handsome face. I have never seen you as broken, Henry. I see the most brilliant, generous, and handsome man I have ever known." The emotional floodgates finally burst wide open. Henry leaned in, closing the remaining distance between them, and their first kiss was a breathtaking collision of desperate longing and profound relief. When they finally pulled apart, completely breathless, they both agreed to navigate this terrifying new romantic territory with the utmost care, terrified of ruining the spectacular business they had built. Over the following months, their beautiful romance blossomed with quiet dignity. Henry became a cherished regular at Lily's humble family dinners, instantly winning over Valerie, with his respectful charm and helping young Sophia with her complex mathematics homework. In return, Lily brought a chaotic, vibrant joy to Henry's massive, echoing mansion, filling its sterile, silent halls with genuine laughter and the rich aromas of her spectacular cooking. But their idyllic happiness was secretly infuriating a dark presence within the company's executive board. Albert, a ruthless minority shareholder who despised Henry's compassionate leadership style, saw Lily as a massive threat to his own influence. One afternoon, Albert cornered Lily in the empty cafeteria hallway, his face twisted in an ugly, patronizing sneer. "I know exactly what you are doing, you little street rat," he hissed venomously. "You are preying on a emotionally fragile cripple to steal a piece of this empire. But mark my words, if you try to influence a single corporate decision, I will personally crush you and throw you right back onto the freezing pavement where you belong." Lily stood her ground, her spine rigid with defiance, but Albert's vicious threats left a cold knot of genuine terror sitting heavily in her stomach. She initially tried to hide the ugly confrontation from Henry, not wanting to ignite a destructive corporate war, but Henry possessed an uncanny ability to read her every emotion. When she finally confessed Albert's threats later that evening, Henry's reaction was terrifyingly calm, a cold, calculated fury radiating from his eyes. "Albert severely underestimates both of us, if he thinks I will allow him to threaten the woman I love. I am not a weak man, Lily, and I do not need anyone's permission to be happy." Despite his fierce reassurances, Albert was far from finished. Knowing he could not attack Henry directly, Albert utilized his corrupt connections at City Hall to orchestrate a devastatingly brutal, unannounced health and safety inspection of Lily's beloved cafeteria during the absolute peak of the Friday lunch rush. 3 stern, uncompromising inspectors marched into the kitchen, their clipboards ready to destroy her dreams. They meticulously scrutinized every single inch of the facility, intentionally finding obscure minor technicalities regarding the ventilation ducts and the exact temperature logs of the organic produce. Although the food was absolutely flawless, they aggressively issued thousands of dollars in crushing fines and formally threatened to chain the doors shut within 48 hours if the impossible upgrades were not instantly completed. Lily was completely devastated, sobbing quietly in the empty kitchen after the inspectors finally left. The fines were utterly astronomical, far exceeding the modest savings she had managed to accumulate over the past year. Her entire world, the beautiful sanctuary she had built from scratch, was on the verge of total collapse. When Henry discovered the sabotage, he immediately whipped out his checkbook, ready to pay the massive fines and unleash his army of elite corporate lawyers upon the city inspectors. But Lily, driven by a fierce, stubborn pride, tearfully refused his money, terrified that accepting his financial rescue would perfectly validate all the ugly rumors that she was nothing but a manipulative gold digger. It was Valerie visiting the cafeteria the next morning who delivered the harsh, necessary wisdom. "My beautiful, stubborn girl," Valerie said, wiping the tears from Lily's cheeks. "A true partnership means catching each other when you fall. If you push away the man who loves you just to satisfy your own foolish pride, You are letting that wicked man Albert win without a fight. Partners save each other. Swallowing her immense pride, Lily walked into Henry's office and formally asked for his assistance, specifically requesting it be documented as a strict business loan. Henry gently refused the loan paperwork, kissing her forehead tenderly. We are partners, Lily. We protect our home together. With Henry's immense resources and Lily's tireless labor, they paid every single fine, completely upgraded the ventilation systems over the weekend, and secured ironclad, permanent licenses by Monday morning. Albert was visibly furious when he saw the cafeteria open and thriving, realizing his malicious plot had completely failed. Instead of driving a permanent wedge between them, the intense crisis had forged their connection into unbreakable steel, proving to everyone that Lily and Henry were an absolutely unstoppable force, ready to conquer whatever the future held. 2.5 years after that fateful morning on the freezing pavement, the company celebrated a massive milestone, and Henry planned an incredibly special evening. He completely transformed the skyscraper's sweeping rooftop garden, adorning it with hundreds of glowing candles, cascading white roses, and a private string quartet playing softly under the Chicago stars. When he brought Lily up to the roof, she was absolutely mesmerized by the breathtaking beauty of the scene. After a spectacular private dinner, Henry reached into his tailored jacket, pulling out a small velvet box. Lily, these past years have been the most profoundly beautiful chapters of my entire existence. You taught my broken heart how to dream again. He opened the box to reveal a stunningly elegant, understated diamond ring. Will you do me the supreme honor of becoming my wife? Tears of pure, overwhelming joy cascaded down Lily's face as she looked at the magnificent man who had rescued her from the cold streets and elevated her to the stars. Yes, Henry, 1,000,000 times, yes, she cried out, dropping to her knees so she could hold him tightly in his chair. The joyous news of their official engagement sent ripples of pure happiness through their loyal employees, but it pushed Albert over the edge into sheer desperate madness. Realizing his window to seize absolute control of the company was rapidly closing, Albert hired a deeply corrupt external auditing firm to manufacture false reports, intentionally making it appear as though the healthy cafeteria was bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars from the main corporate accounts through fraudulent vendor contracts. Albert presented these entirely fabricated documents to the board of directors, demanding an immediate suspension of the cafeteria operations and officially challenging Henry's mental competency to lead the company, claiming Henry was completely blinded by a toxic romance. The accusation was incredibly serious, threatening to dismantle the entire empire Henry had built. Knowing they had to strike back with undeniable facts, Lily and Sarah spent 5 agonizing nights secretly locked in the accounting office, meticulously combing through thousands of digital invoices and bank statements. Around 3 o'clock in the morning on a stormy Thursday, Lily finally uncovered the smoking gun. Albert had been secretly funneling $12,000 every single month to a fake maintenance company completely owned by his own brother-in-law, hiding the theft under the cafeteria's operational budget. They finally had the absolute proof required to destroy Albert. But before they could deliver the finishing blow, a horrific tragedy struck. The immense, crushing stress of the corporate war took a catastrophic toll on Henry's body. While getting ready for work the next morning, he complained of a sudden agonizing pain in his chest before collapsing completely unconscious onto the bedroom floor. Paramedics rushed him to the premier hospital in the city, where doctors diagnosed a massive, life-threatening pulmonary embolism, a terrifying complication linked to his long-term immobility and recent exhaustion. Henry was immediately placed on a ventilator and induced into a deep medical coma to save his failing organs. Lily's vibrant, beautiful world instantly shattered into 1,000,000 jagged pieces, as she stared at the man she loved through the glass of the intensive care unit. Sensing the perfect opportunity to strike while the king was critically wounded, Albert arrived at the hospital accompanied by 3 ruthless corporate lawyers and a highly questionable emergency court order. "I am terribly sorry for your tragic loss." "My dear," Albert sneered with venomous fake sympathy. "But since you are not legally married to him yet, the board has officially appointed me as the interim chief executive and his temporary medical proxy. You have absolutely 0 rights here. Security will escort you out of the building, and you are strictly limited to 10 minutes of supervised visitation per day." Lily felt a primal ancestral rage ignite violently within her soul. "If you think you can banish me from his side, Albert, you have severely miscalculated," she hissed, her eyes burning with an unyielding, ferocious fire. Driven by a desperate, terrifying love, Lily quickly mobilized the invisible army of loyal workers she and Henry had cultivated over the years. She gathered Sarah Marcus, the massive head of security, and Thomas, a brilliant young technician from the company's information technology department. "We have less than 48 hours before Albert legally signs away the main patents and completely drains the corporate accounts," Lily told them in the hospital cafeteria. "I need all the digital proof extracted directly from Albert's private server tonight." That very midnight, while Albert slept soundly in his penthouse, Marcus bypassed the executive security protocols, allowing Thomas to seamlessly hack into Albert's highly encrypted terminal, downloading every single damning email, offshore bank transfer, and illegal contract onto a secure flash drive. The following afternoon, Albert convened an emergency meeting of the board of directors to officially vote on selling the company's most lucrative assets to his secret partners. Just as he raised his pen to sign the destructive documents, the heavy oak doors of the boardroom violently burst open. Lily marched into the room looking exhausted, her clothes slightly wrinkled from sleeping in hospital chairs, but carrying the fierce, terrifying aura of a lioness protecting her family. Ignoring Albert's screaming demands for security, she plugged the flash drive directly into the main projector. "Gentlemen, before you sign anything, you need to see exactly where your missing millions have been going," Lily announced with a voice of pure steel. The massive screen illuminated with undeniable, overwhelming proof of Albert's extensive, years-long embezzlement scheme. The entire boardroom fell into a stunned, breathless silence as the catastrophic evidence washed over them. One of the senior board members immediately picked up his cellular phone and dialed the federal authorities. Albert's face drained of all color as the police arrived mere minutes later, placing him in heavy steel handcuffs and dragging him out of the magnificent building in absolute disgrace. Having saved the empire, Lily immediately raced back to the hospital, her heart pounding with frantic prayers. As the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the blinds of the intensive care unit, she sat beside Henry's bed, gently holding his limp hand. Suddenly, she felt a weak, deliberate squeeze against her fingers. She gasped, looking up to see Henry's eyes slowly fluttering open, gazing at her with an eternity of profound, infinite love. Henry's medical recovery was agonizingly slow and fiercely demanding, requiring several grueling months of intensive physical therapy and dedicated rest. However, this time, unlike the dark aftermath of his tragic car accident, he was never alone for a single second. Lily practically transformed his hospital suite into a bustling executive command center, managing the massive cafeteria network and his corporate empire simultaneously, all while feeding him the rich, healing organic broths she personally cooked in the hospital's kitchen. 6 months after his terrifying collapse, they finally celebrated their beautiful wedding. They completely bypassed the grand, ostentatious society ballrooms, opting instead for a deeply intimate, profoundly emotional ceremony in the vibrant, blooming garden of their own home. Valerie, looking incredibly fragile, but radiating absolute joy, proudly wheeled Henry down the grassy aisle toward the beautiful altar. Lily walked toward him barefoot, across the cool, fresh grass, wearing a stunningly simple white gown with wild daisies woven through her dark hair. When the majestic moment arrived to exchange their sacred vows, Henry signaled his physical therapist to step forward. Gripping the sturdy armrests of his wheelchair with Herculean effort, his arms shaking violently under the immense strain, Henry miraculously pushed himself up until he was standing completely upright, using Lily's strong, supportive hands to maintain his fragile balance. I spent 12 long years utterly convinced that my life had permanently ended on that highway. Henry declared, tears streaming freely down his handsome face. But I was entirely wrong. My true life did not begin until the freezing morning I tasted your sandwich and experienced the boundless depth of your beautiful soul. The ensuing years brought an astonishing avalanche of spectacular growth and profound blessings in absolutely every area of their lives. Lily's humble healthy food station rapidly evolved into a massive, highly respected national franchise, providing nutritious, affordable meals to public schools and struggling hospitals across the United States. Henry eventually sold a significant, highly lucrative portion of his corporate shares, choosing to step back from the ruthless daily grind to focus entirely on building a philanthropic foundation with Lily. Their charity provided essential microloans and expert business mentorship to impoverished, struggling street vendors, intentionally paying forward the miraculous opportunity Henry had once given to Lily on that freezing sidewalk. Their partnership was a beautiful testament to the incredible power of shared vision and mutual unyielding respect. 2 wonderfully chaotic years after their magical wedding, they welcomed their first beautiful child, a healthy, boisterous boy they joyfully named Gabriel. Henry was initially terrified that his physical limitations would make him an inadequate father, but he quickly discovered that his wheelchair was actually a magical asset. Little Gabriel absolutely loved taking gentle rides on his father's lap around the sprawling mansion. A few years later, their family was perfectly completed by the arrival of a brilliant, observant little girl named Sophia. Tragically, shortly after Sophia's birth, Valerie's tired heart finally gave out. She passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 68, surrounded by the immense love of her daughters and the profound gratitude of the millionaire son-in-law she had bravely encouraged Lily to trust. Over the decades, Gabriel became a compassionate engineer who developed assistive technology for people with disabilities inspired by his father, while Sophia grew into an acclaimed graphic designer devoted to social justice. Lily became a respected motivational speaker and successful culinary entrepreneur without ever losing her humility. One snowy evening, she found the original $50 bill Henry had once given her, and together they fondly remembered how that small act of kindness changed both of their lives forever. For their 30th wedding anniversary, Henry secretly arranged for the city to close the very street where they first met. The place where Lily had once struggled to survive was transformed into a beautiful candlelit dinner setting with a bronze plaque honoring their charitable foundation, allowing them to celebrate the extraordinary journey they had built together. Looking back after 40 years, their story became a powerful reminder that life's greatest miracles often begin with simple acts of compassion. Real change does not require wealth or power, but the courage to recognize another person's humanity during their most vulnerable moments. Their lives proved that true success is measured not by money status or achievements, but by the lives we touch, the hope we inspire, and the love we freely give. By choosing empathy over judgment, they created a lasting legacy that would continue to inspire others for generations.